When a professor becomes romantically involved with his attractive student, he finds himself entangled in a series of complications that escalate when he also develops feelings for his lover's sister. As a child, Richard admired his father, Gordon, a charismatic figure who had numerous romantic relationships and taught literature at Cambridge University. Richard would attend his father's lectures, absorbing lessons about poets who defied societal norms, which Gordon believed encapsulated the essence of romance. Years later, Richard assumes his father's position, teaching the same class with a similarly idealized view of romance, earning the admiration of one of his students, Kate. Their relationship evolves into a romantic affair, prompting Kate to introduce Richard to her family. However, during their meeting at a restaurant, Richard encounters Olivia, who accidentally loses her phone and seems detached from the world. Despite their initial banter, Richard advises Olivia against isolating herself, sparking a flirtatious exchange between them. Just as their connection deepens, Kate arrives and reveals that Olivia is her sister. The situation becomes even more complicated when Kate mentions Olivia's boyfriend, a renowned romance writer. Throughout the encounter, Richard learns about the sisters' pact to maintain transparency, hinting at the complexity of their family dynamics. Additionally, Olivia serves as the man's editor, a fact that Kate finds romantic. When Richard playfully expresses admiration for this dynamic, Olivia subtly suggests that a professor's passion for his student is even more romantic, earning a disapproving look from her sister. Richard then offers Olivia some of his steak, which she misinterprets as an innuendo, leading to her criticism of him for seemingly targeting her sister, whom Olivia believes is dating him to resolve her issues with their father. Kate, offended by Olivia's accusation, reminds her of her own past actions, including eloping with a man when she was younger. However, Olivia defends herself, explaining that she believes she was pregnant at the time. To everyone's surprise, Kate reveals that she is actually pregnant, prompting Richard to excuse himself to collect his thoughts. Concerned, Kate approaches him, offering to release him from any obligation if he doesn't want to become a father, especially since she plans to return to America. Despite the unexpected turn of events, Richard expresses his support, leading to a tender moment between them. Feeling conflicted, Richard seeks guidance from his father, Gordon, and his stepmother, Joan. Reflecting on his own tumultuous romantic history, Gordon advises against settling down with Kate. However, Richard ultimately chooses to defy his father's counsel and commit to Kate. They marry, relocate to Los Angeles, and start a family. Despite his contentment with family life, Richard becomes disillusioned with his career as he discovers that his American students lack the same enthusiasm for romantic literature as his previous students in Cambridge. Despite encouragement from his colleague Angela to pursue opportunities at better universities, Richard opts to prioritize time with his family over professional advancement. Years later, during a lunch outing with his son Jake, Richard inadvertently witnesses Kate getting into a car with another man. Unaware of the situation, Richard reassures Jake by calling Kate at work. Panicked, Kate asks her companion, Brian, to pull over as she takes the call, fearing that her secret may be exposed. Later that evening, Olivia calls their home, reaching Richard instead of her sister, to share her engagement to her boyfriend Alan and their plans to move in together. Before Richard can process this news, Kate returns home and confesses that she has fallen in love with someone else. She explains that their relationship initially stemmed from her unresolved issues with her father, and she now realizes that she's with Brian. Richard, angered by Kate's confession, perceives Brian as nothing more than a foolish co-worker. Asserting his commitment to their son Jake, Richard tells Kate that she can leave if she chooses, but he won't abandon their child. With this decision, he relocates to the pool house behind Kate's residence, allowing him to remain close to his son while keeping an eye on his soon-to-be ex-wife and her new partner. Despite the change in living arrangements, Richard soon finds himself drawn back into the world of entertaining his attractive students. One day, Professor Piggott from the University of Los Angeles pays Richard a visit, inviting him to his social gathering the following day. Piggott hints that networking at the event might improve Richard's prospects of securing a position at their university, prompting Richard to agree to attend. Meanwhile, Olivia visits her gynecologist in hopes of enhancing her chances of conceiving a child with Alan. However, her plans take a drastic turn when she discovers Alan in bed with her gynecologist later that day. Elsewhere, Richard spends time with his son, Jake. When Brian visits, he attempts to teach Jake how to use a baseball bat, causing Richard to become distracted and inadvertently get hit in the face by a ball. As Richard tends to his injury, Brian delivers a letter from the immigration office, revealing that Richard has missed important appointments and risks deportation unless he attends a meeting with Kate. The next day, Richard visits the dentist to address his broken tooth from the baseball incident. Despite being advised against consuming alcohol while on medication, he indulges in some liquor at the soiree hosted by Piggott. However, the evening takes a turn for the worse when Richard's medication causes him to feel disoriented, leading him to leave the party early and drive home, resulting in his arrest for driving under the influence. Kate bails Richard out of jail the following day, but his reckless behavior convinces her that he is not responsible enough to care for their son while she and Brian are away. Desperate for help, Kate calls Olivia, who agrees to assist. As Olivia settles in, she reveals her breakup with Alan, sparking bitterness in Richard as he compares Olivia's experience to his own. An argument ensues between Richard and Kate, during which Kate confronts Richard about his disregard for the calls from his immigration officer. She insists that if he wants her to maintain the facade of a happy marriage to aid his immigration status, he must comply with her demands. In an attempt to salvage his situation, Richard meets with his lawyer, Ernesto, who advises him to attend a recovery program to address his drinking problem, especially considering the recent DUI arrest. As Richard grapples with his personal issues, he crosses paths with Olivia, who is struggling to pick up Jake from school. Despite their differences, Richard offers his assistance, leading to an unexpected bonding experience during the car ride. However, Richard's troubles continue as he struggles to admit his drinking problem during the recovery program meetings. Meanwhile, Olivia pursues her aspirations of becoming a writer, meeting with her publisher, Tim, who encourages her work while suggesting she adds more salacious elements to her writing. Amidst his struggles, Richard receives a warning from Ernesto about an immigration agent keeping an eye on him. Fearing scrutiny, Richard resorts to desperate measures, pretending to be supportive and declaring his love for life and respect for the country in front of the supposed agent. Despite his facade, Richard rushes home when Olivia informs him that Jake has had a nightmare, showcasing his genuine care for his son in the midst of chaos. After putting Jake to bed, Richard joins Olivia in the kitchen, where she expresses admiration for his parenting skills. In response, Richard reflects on his past experiences with women, noting how they often start by loving him before turning to hatred. Olivia, however, reveals that her feelings toward him have evolved from initial dislike to occasional frustration. Their exchange sparks a moment of connection between them. Later that night, Richard observes Olivia using his calming technique on herself through her bedroom window, prompting her to remove her engagement ring from Alan. The following day, with Jake away for a sleepover, Richard and Olivia find themselves alone in the house. Richard's curiosity about Olivia leads him to check on her, only to encounter Tim emerging from the shower, leading Richard to assume Olivia is involved with her publisher. Despite his jealousy, Richard eventually invites Olivia for wine, providing an opportunity for her to vent about her frustrations with Tim's critique of her work. During their conversation, Richard admits his disdain for Olivia's ex's novels and confesses that he often thought of her while reading them. He reassures her of her talent and worth, leading to a moment of intimacy between them. The next morning, they awaken to the unexpected return of Kate and Brian. Panicked, Olivia rushes to the main house, while Richard confides in Angela about their indiscretion. Richard's colleagues express shock and disapproval over his actions, knowing that Kate's reaction could result in Richard being deported. The situation leaves Richard troubled by the consequences of his actions and the potential fallout with his family. Confident that Kate won't discover their affair, Richard is reminded by Angela of the closeness between the sisters, suggesting that Olivia might eventually disclose the truth. Alarmed, Richard rushes home to check in on Kate, who informs him that Olivia only spoke positively about his parenting skills, leaving Kate feeling guilty about her own behavior towards him. Sensing an opportunity to mend their relationship, Richard hurries to speak with Olivia, who contemplates revealing the truth to her sister. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Gordon, Richard's father, diverting their attention. The family spends the day together at the beach, during which Richard pleads with Olivia to delay telling Kate until after his immigration appointment. Concerned about Richard's potential deportation, Olivia reluctantly agrees. However, tensions escalate when Gordon's behavior becomes erratic, including smoking questionable substances with Brian. Richard confronts his father about his problematic views on women and their strained relationship, ultimately demanding him to leave. The following morning, Richard wakes up to find Gordon gone, leaving behind a bag of illicit substances. He attends the final session of his recovery program, but the leader refuses to sign his completion form, questioning his sincerity. Frustrated, Richard vents to his fellow member Cindy and jokingly suggests they drink and smoke the contents of his father's bag. However, he quickly clarifies that he's not serious. Adding to his frustrations, Richard notices Professor Pigott observing his lecture. Feeling disillusioned with the romanticized ideals he once taught, Richard acknowledges the need for a more practical approach to literature, encouraging his students to find their own voices rather than adhering to outdated notions of romance. Despite potential repercussions, Richard prioritizes honesty and authenticity. Later, Professor Pigott visits Richard at his home and expresses admiration for his fresh perspective on literature, offering him a position at the University of Los Angeles. Overjoyed, Richard shares the news with Olivia, unaware that Kate and Brian are eavesdropping. Kate is devastated by Olivia's betrayal and promptly kicks them out of her house, ending their relationship on a bitter note. With his marriage ruined and his recovery program failed, Richard is left with no choice but to face his immigration interview alone with Ernesto the next day. To his dismay, they discover that Cindy, the fellow member from his recovery program, is the agent who has been tailing him. Given his recent behavior, she recommends against allowing him to stay in the country. Richard says goodbye to his son before being forced to leave the country. Back in Cambridge, Richard returns to his old job, finding solace in the classroom despite missing his family dearly. Gordon falls ill and is hospitalized, prompting Richard to visit him. In a heartfelt moment, Gordon expresses admiration for Richard's efforts to be a good father, but Richard disagrees, feeling estranged from Kate's family. As Gordon's health deteriorates, he encourages Richard to fight for his family and not repeat his mistakes. Inspired by his father's words, Richard reconciles with him before Gordon passes away. Richard tries to reconnect with Jake through video calls, but his son is still upset with him for leaving. Ryan informs Richard that the sisters are still not speaking to each other, with Kate refusing to attend Olivia's book launch. Determined to return to America, Richard discovers Gordon's will, which brightens his mood. He quickly contacts Ernesto to use the inheritance to facilitate his return. Richard travels to Mexico and joins immigrants in crossing the border, eventually making it back to Kate's house. Despite Kate's concerns about immigration, Richard reassures her that Ernesto will handle everything, including securing his permanent stay in America. He apologizes to Kate for sleeping with her sister and emphasizes his devotion to their son, leading to her forgiveness. The next day, they attend Olivia's book launch, surprising her. This allows Kate to reconcile with her sister, while Richard confesses his love for Olivia. They scatter Gordon's ashes by the beach where they last spent time together, and Richard proposes to Olivia, ensuring his stay in the country. She accepts, and they embrace, eager to reunite their family. Thank you for watching.